Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is February 19th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So let's cover some of the news that happened in the last few days. Some of them are good, but some of them are also bad. And I don't think it's a surprise to you that obviously Avdiivka fell to Russia, and this was unfortunately inevitable. I've talked about it last week. Based on the map updates, we've seen that the Russians were getting a pretty sizable foothold, and due to the main reason being that the Ukrainians did not get the support, weapons, and support necessary to continue defending themselves, this allowed the Russians to capture the city of Avdiivka. Now, the main question is, was it worth it for the Russians? In my humble opinion, I don't think it was, and this article reiterates the colossal losses that the Russians have had in the last 5 months in Avdiivka. These losses were higher than the entire Soviet-Afghan war. So in total, the Russians, according to Ukrainian sources, have lost more than 47,000 troops in the fighting for the city. And of these 47,000, about 17,000 of them were killed, and a further 30,000 were wounded in action. So that brings us to the 47,000 number in the last 5 months. And also, as of Monday, I forgot to mention that the Russians have crossed the 400,000 casualty mark, and Western estimates bring it to a much smaller number, around 300,000. So the truth is somewhere in the middle, but truly colossal losses in less than 2 years of the war. And also, open source intelligence confirms that the armored vehicles that the Russians have lost in Avdiivka in the past 5 months have also been very high. That is 670 vehicles that were destroyed or damaged by the Ukrainians versus 57 Ukrainian armored vehicle losses in the past 5 months. So the ratio is pretty much 10 to 1, which is an excellent ratio. And, you know, not that the Russians really care much about it, but about their deaths and their losses, but imagine if the Americans, had a campaign like this for 5 months where they had 50,000 casualties to capture, let's say, a city of the size of Greenville, Texas. You know, there would have been a massive outrage in the United States. But in Russia, it's completely normal. And I think that dying for them is some sort of, the ultimate martyrdom that is somewhat glorified in Russia. So truly, truly terrible losses. And unfortunately, for Ukraine, they have no option for this year based on what's going on around the world and the lack of really a true commitment to provide weaponry, especially from the United States, to Ukraine. Ukraine will have no option but to continue with this strategy of aggressive defense and making the Russians pay for every meter that they try to take. And yes, in Europe, there's a lot of countries now that have stepped it up, including Germany, Denmark, the UK, the Baltics. Many countries have stepped it up. But unfortunately, the most important partner right now for Ukraine, which is the United States, which has plenty of weapons and ammunition. There is internal strife and there's internal sabotage being done within the United States. So Ukraine unfortunately cannot count right now on the United States, which is very unfortunate because this is the result of this of these conflicts, these politicians that try to play politics in a time where the Ukrainians need an absolute commitment. Now, talking about the good stuff, the Russian Air Force have had some catastrophic losses as well in the last 3 days. And this is a direct result of them really trying to push further and further in Avdiivka and other directions. They've become more aggressive. They really are desperate to continue with this momentum. And as a result of that, they've lost a total of 6 jet fighters and bombers in the last 3 days. And today, there's another confirmation that the Russians have lost an Su-34 and an Su-35 in the Donetsk, Mariupol direction. And it's really become difficult to track. In the last few weeks, Russia's really been losing them almost on a weekly basis. At the very least, 1 jet fighter per week. And this is obviously the result of them trying to fly closer to launch these glide bombs, these missiles on fortified Ukrainian positions. But the Ukrainians, thanks to the West, have much better surface-to-air missile systems, air defense systems, which are very capable and can shoot down effectively these very expensive jet fighters that the Russians are utilizing in their air campaigns. And it's not like the Russians can rebuild them or repair them or replace them very quickly either. And also there is the question of pilots and training them. Many of them aren't able to eject on time and they die. So this is a very good story, and hopefully the Russians will be crippled by the time Ukraine receives the F-16s in the next few months. And really the F-16s, although I don't believe they're the panacea, they really are going to make an impact in regards to hitting the Russians in the rear and really being effective at grinding down Russian logistics. I really believe that. And also countering the Russian Air Force as well. So we'll see how that develops in the next few weeks, next few months. But I'm really hoping that the F-16s will come very soon. Although, again, I'm not saying that they will change the course of this war, because I don't believe that. Ukraine will need far more than just a few F-16s to beat Russia. Last but not least, let's talk about Alexei Navalny. And, everybody pretty much heard the story that he was killed. And we know that even without any proof of it, we can confirm almost 99% certainty that Putin ordered the assassination of Alexei Navalny. He was his biggest, arguably, contender and opposition leader. And it's just a direct result of Putin not feeling any consequences at this point. He feels like he can get away with anything. He's had multiple victories in the last few weeks. He's had a 2-hour propaganda interview with Tucker Carlson. Then, recently he captured Avdiivka. And he's been getting a lot of wins, and he feels like he can just basically get away with anything. And also the fact that he understands that he needs to continuously suppress and destroy any alternative for the Russians, right? And Navalny was arguably the most effective alternative for the Russians. And as you can see here, there is now more confirmations indicating that some medics indicate that they found bruises on in the morgue on Alexei Navalny. So this wasn't just him unconsciously falling and dying. So there's more to that story. Now let's talk a little bit about my posts. And I posted on Friday, I believe, a comment indicating that Navalny was never pro-Ukrainian. And that is a serious issue, because we can, really lament his death, and I understand that, because Navalny, to his credit, was a very effective Putin critic. And I've really enjoyed some of his videos, and especially his documentary about the Putin mansion close to Sochi that he built himself that was worth like $1 billion or $2 billion. And just really showcasing the sheer corruption within Putin's regime. He's been very effective at that, and he deserves credit. But he was never pro-Ukraine. And unfortunately, something that really saddened me since the beginning of the conflict, the full-scale invasion in 2022, is that the Navalny team really didn't fully condemn Russia's war against Ukraine. They only mentioned that it's undesirable, and there was a very weak kind of support for Ukraine on this from Navalny's team. And they more or less pursued a narrative that this is Putin's war and not Russia's war, kind of just removing the responsibility of the regular Russian citizen that they brought this war to the Ukrainians. And as I've mentioned, really, Navalny wasted a golden opportunity to truly save Russia. And that is, really leading the Russians and telling them that they need to support the Ukrainian cause as much as possible, because that's their only chance to remove Putin and destroy this regime and bring back democracy and freedom. Instead, there were just these half-assed attempts to kind of try to, not put the responsibility on the Russian, shoulders, and really just put it all on the Putin regime, which is completely untrue. And, the Navalny team's values and views on many aspects of the war are often contradictory and very consistent. And I've noticed that in the last 2 years, especially. And to me, the most unfortunate thing is that he wasted a golden opportunity to lead millions of Russians that believed in Navalny to get rid of Putin by directly supporting Ukraine. And I think that why he didn't do that is because he's fearful, or he was fearful, of the consequences of the Putin regime collapsing. And as a direct result of that, perhaps Russia losing its territory, right? And several ethnic minorities declaring independence, and Russia just fracturing into multiple states, because he also had very chauvinistic and imperialistic philosophies. And, you know, that's what happened. And I really need to highlight that, because a lot of the people in the West seem to think that he was this like true democratic leader that believed in a truly free Russia. I just think he was a much more softer type of Putin. And so I think that we need to also discuss that. So let me know, guys, in the comment section what you think about my comments here. But I certainly believe that he was never pro-Ukrainian, and he wasted away a golden opportunity to help not only, you know, the Russians, but help the Ukrainians win this war and restore the image that the Russians, you know, really care about democracy and freedom. And clearly they don't, because even after his death, what happened? A few, you know, 1,000 protesters went in the streets to lay down flowers and did absolutely nothing. I mean, that's what Russia is. Just a bunch of, you know, bunch of people that don't take action. They're fearful, they're oppressed, and that will continue to be the case until Russia's defeated. And I think their collapse will be inevitable, and Russia will fracture into multiple states. Let me know what you guys think about my opinions here. Along some other news, and I will finish this video, the Biden administration is now considering to give long-range ATACMS to the Ukrainians. And we're talking about the 300+ kilometer ATACMS that the United States has as a result of that bill not being passed and being blocked by the Republicans. And I really hope that that's going to happen. And it's a must. The Ukrainians need that. These ATACMS, we've seen how effective they were. A few months ago, Ukraine received a few of them, and they managed to destroy, effectively destroyed 2 airfields, I believe one in Luhansk and one in Donetsk, and destroyed dozens of helicopters and damaged dozens of helicopters and jet fighters. So imagine if they could receive them in the hundreds, and they could effectively destroy the Crimea Bridge, multiple airfields, destroy Russian logistics and military bases. I think the Biden administration needs to give the green light for Ukraine to hit Russian territory and Russian military targets. That is really important. If they can't get that bill to pass, at least give Ukraine the long-range missiles to be able to really cripple the Russian military in Russia, or at the very least in Crimea. And also, as a result of that, there's now some talks about Germany following Navalny's death, that you know, there is opposition leaders of Scholz and some newspapers that are basically urging Germany to provide Ukraine with the Taurus missiles following Navalny's death, which again I fully support, and this will help the Ukrainians bring down that Crimea Bridge. If the Crimea Bridge is destroyed, this will severely cripple the Russians. We already know that. So I really hope that these 2 actions will be done from the United States and from Germany. And one last little news is that a Russian pilot that defected, I believe in 2022 or 2023, who utilized this program that the Ukrainians basically brought to the Russians. Essentially, if they were to give up military assets such as a helicopter, a jet fighter, or whatever, they would get a compensation. And so this Russian pilot named Maxim Kuzminov, he defected with Mi-8 helicopter, was reportedly assassinated in Spain. So he received compensation as a result of this defection, providing the Ukrainian military with a Mi-8 helicopter. But then now there's mentions that he was assassinated in Spain. It's unconfirmed now, because he was supposed to be 28 or 29, and in Spain, in the newspapers, they're mentioning the death of a 33-year-old Russian man. So it's unconfirmed now, but it would surely be interesting to hear if that is actually the truth, and this Maxim Kuzminov actually died. So I'll keep you guys updated. So that's the video for today, guys. Let me know about any of the topics I covered today. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Again, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel, like my video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Slava Ukraini!